name is Abdelkarim Ibrahim, and I'm from London, England. First of all, I would love to do my presentation in Arabic, but my vocabulary is limited, so I hope you appreciate I can only do it in English on this occasion. Inshallah, in the future, I'll try again in Arabic, inshallah. Okay. Yeah, it's always the case, people tend to think that something is better than what they have, all over the world, yeah? And it actually originated with farmers a long time ago in a place called Ireland, which is part of the UK. And every year the harvest would come, and the question would be, is the grass greener on the other side, when he's talking to another farmer? Like saying, is your harvest better than this side? But then it became a generic saying, not just about immigration, it was about all kinds of things. I mean, even husband and wife use it. You know, a husband might think, yeah, should I have gone with that woman? And the woman might be thinking, should I have gone with that man or whatever? So it's become a generic thing, and it's something that needs to be addressed, in my opinion, particularly in Sudan, because every time I come here, people keep asking me to help them to go to London, and they have this misconception about not just London, England, Europe, and America, that when you go there, everything is going to be great. You're going to be walking along the street, you know, there's going to pick $20 from the floor, put it in your pocket, and it's just not like that at all. It isn't. Yes, there are benefits. Yep, there are benefits. Okay, I've been ushered along. I tend to talk a lot as well, so, okay, here we go. So, Sudanese mass migration to the UK began in the late 1980s to early 90s. This was as a result of the military coup led by former President Omar al-Bashir. The initial intention for the majority of those who mass migrated out of Sudan was to remain in exile for a short term, as it was widely assumed that the new regime would not last long and they would return back to a democratic government forthcoming. So the majority of the people that left Sudan in the late 80s and early 90s, they only went for a short period of time thinking, Bashir is not going to last long, we'll come back after 3 or 4 years. And now they're still there 25 years later. Sudanese in the United Kingdom, including Sudanese-born immigrants, tend to, in the UK, and their British-born descendants are extremely diverse group, especially in terms of political and religious views. It is thought that the UK is home to the oldest Sudanese diaspora in the Western world, as one of the largest. So the first migration that we had was in the 90s, and then we had a second wave from 2003 onwards, and these were mainly refugees coming from Darfur and other places. While we cannot deny that some of those achievements have been attained, which vary in degrees of success for many, the reality has them facing other struggles and challenges in a new environment. Struggles that were not part of the pre-written script leaving Sudan, which on reflection has led many of them posing the question, was it really worth it? So we got that. Oops, I'm going backwards. So, some problems faced by immigrants. The first one, obviously, is the language barrier, and that goes without saying. So settling in a new region possesses many challenges, whatever the background, and there are some that are common experiences for migrants across the globe. So we're talking about language. It's no great surprise that language tops the list of issues facing immigrants to any country. Being able to communicate affects every aspect of life which we have to interact with others, from jobs to schooling to simply finding your way around or buying food. Learning a native language is absolutely essential, yeah? And sometimes it can take time, but that should be the first thing. Even before you leave, you should at least try to acquire some means of communicating whichever country you're deciding to go to. Employment. The next barrier that many new immigrants commonly cite when starting a new life in a new country is finding suitable employment. Don't forget the first point, and that is the language skills. So you need to have the language first before you can actually look for a job. Now, how long is it going to take you to acquire the necessary skills in the language before you can get a job. That may take time also. Housing. A big priority for anybody moving to a new area or country is to secure housing. In Britain at the moment, we do have a housing crisis, actually. There is. There just isn't. It's like Khartoum now, people from outside states are all migrating to Khartoum. The same thing is happening in London. The majority of the immigrants that leave, they always go to London. It's the main attraction. We've got cities dotted all over the place, but London seems to be the main attraction. And this has caused a problem, an issue in housing. So much so that now people are being sent outside of London to really far places where they might feel isolated, they don't have any family or friends around them, there may not be any Muslims there may be serious cultural differences. It is a major problem at the moment in London and the UK. Services, accessing services. The type, range and quality of services available in your new country is likely to be different to that of your native country. Now, we do have free services in the UK, but how you access them and the means that you go about access them could be a problem also, notwithstanding the language barrier. So we have people that have come into the UK not understanding what is available or what they can access because they don't understand that. We do have organizations that do work with refugees and newly arrived immigrants that do help them in this process. But again, it can be a problem if you don't live in the areas where those organizations are, because as I said, they are moving immigrants to different parts of the UK, and your country of origin support services might not be operating around there. Transportation. Access to transportation can be essential in that it can make access to education and employment far easier. Immigrants face particular problems in this respect on two levels. Firstly, you could have a driving license from here. It might not be acceptable over there, so you might have to use the local transport. Secondly, that language barrier, again, understanding or even finding useful local public transit survives a hard task. Now, I must admit that the transport in London is quite good. It really is, but if you've just arrived into the country, you might find it difficult trying to navigate yourself around the city and places like that. Cultural differences. This is the big issue that I found, especially in my line of work, because I am a senior consultant for community engagement and development. And most of my work is with immigrant communities, particularly Sudanese, actually, in central London. So, cultural differences. Well, how can I say? You might find that before you left Sudan and you thought about going to live in England, that everything is going to be fine and that you're going to get on and you're going to get a job and there isn't hardly going to be any issues. Only when you get there, you find that there's huge differences between how you interact with each other and how people interact over there. Now, I have to say, Sudanese in particular have an excellent social sovereignty. They're very good in socializing with each other. They have a good hospitality and things like that. It's quite unique, because I've traveled to different countries in the world and I haven't found it anywhere as hospitable as the people in this country. But when you go to London, you might not find that. You'll find it in pockets. But most people tend to be living by themselves and they don't really concern themselves with others, even your next door neighbor as well. I've been in cases where I've lived next door to someone and we haven't spoke. All we say is hello, and you, sorry? Yeah. So people might find that kind of strange that people don't really communicate with each other, but it's just the way it is. It doesn't mean that they're being rude. They're just like that, And this is something that it takes time to kind of get used to as well, even smiling at people as well. Children is another big issue. In fact, it's one of the main up-and-coming issues among Sudanese in the UK at the moment. Parents experience two different issues when bringing up their children to a new country. Children are likely to be quickly immersed in the new culture through their schools, may begin to seem foreign to their parents. So we as adults, if we move to a foreign country, because we are deeply embedded in our own culture, we can assimilate into the other cultures without losing our identity. Whereas if the children are born there, it's a lot different because the environment impacts on them a lot more. So what's happening with Sudanese abroad now, especially with the children, there's what we call an identity crisis, where they're not sure. Their parents are telling them that they're Sudanese, and they're saying, well, actually, I was born here. And there's this kind of discussion that's going on at the moment between parents and young kids. And we're trying to, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, we're trying to address it through various forums. In some cases, in some extreme cases, it's led to children actually leaving the house because there's a conflict between the way that their parents think and the way that they think. Yeah? So again, but if you're a single person and you're not married, then fine. But if you're married and you have children, you have to consider this, because a lot of Sudanese families now, they're experiencing problem with their children, and they're bringing them back to live in Sudan. Some of them want to bring them back, but it's too late because their children are too big and you can't force them to leave. And some of them are even regretting bringing their children there. I'm not saying this is the case with everybody, so don't go around saying I said everybody's got this problem. I'm just saying it's an issue that's becoming a concern at the moment. A very big issue. I could go into serious details, but I just don't have the time. Yeah, I don't have the time, and I know you know what I'm talking about. So, lastly, I know you're prompting me to hurry up. Racism, right? Racism. Britain is quite a hospitable country, as you know. It does take in refugees, and it is multicultural. It's all of that, and it has a history as well, as being one of the colonial powers. So it's used to working with people from Africa and Asia. However, that doesn't mean that everybody likes immigrants. It doesn't mean that everybody likes non-white people. You know, there's a significant number of people there that are against immigrants, that are against other people, particularly from Africa, particularly if you're from a Muslim country. And you must have heard of Brexit, right? You all heard of Brexit? We had a vote to decide whether Britain should be part of the European Union, and it was a split vote. I think 53 million people voted, not 53, it was 53% that voted to leave, and 48% that remained to stay. Now, one of the main reasons why people wanted to leave the European Union is because of immigration. So there's a movement, there's a mentality at the movement of anti-immigration, not just in Britain, but across Europe. They're actually against people immigrating into the country. And incidents of racism have increased. So, and ironically, you will find somebody from Sudan who may have been in a privileged position when they were here, but then going to London and finding themselves a victim of racism. How many minutes do I have left? 2 minutes. Oh, Sudanese 2 minutes or a British 2 minutes? Brexit and Brexiters, I've just covered that. I call this one Brexiters because Brexiters means that there's many people that are actually leaving and going back to their own countries now. Many people have decided, I've been living in this country for so long, we're now leaving. They're not giving us the figures of how many people are leaving, including British people themselves. They're leaving and they're going to Australia and they're going to Canada and places like that. Again, the concept of is the grass greener on the other side exists there as well. Ghana, in West Africa, this year, 2019, they had what they called the Year of Return, and they were asking all the Ghanaians all over the diaspora to return back with your skills to come and help and develop Ghana. It's called Ghana the Year of Return. I'd advise you to have a look at that, and I hope that one day Sudan can do something like that, similar, because there's a lot of people who live in outside who do want to come back, but they're sitting there waiting to see what happens. Yeah. Sorry. If you do decide to go, have a plan before you leave. Really have a plan. Think about it. Contact others currently living in your intended destination for advice and updates. Have an estimate of time you intend to stay. How long are you going to stay abroad? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? You must give yourself an agenda. You must give yourself a target. Don't just go there and sit down and drink chai and watch football. You know, that you have to have a plan, and I think ultimately, if you stick to your plan, it will work. Seek opportunities, training, and personal development that will benefit Sudan. So if you're going abroad, right, keep Sudan in your mind that you're going to return. What could I bring back to Sudan? How can Sudan benefit from the skills of my own personal development? Because you can't add to what's already there in Europe. Europe is already developed. This is where the development is going to take place now, here in Africa. You can't add anything to Britain or Europe or America or Canada. It's already done. The future is here. Return back to Sudan. Last quote. I've got 1.5 Sudanese minutes left. So we have various youths over there, British born, or they left Sudan when they were very young, and they're doing lots of activities. They're very, very active. They did a lot we did a lot of protests, a lot of muzarat outside the Sudanese embassy, and we're covering this program, which is now gone, just last Friday. And then to address the cultural differences, we've just organized what we call Marhajan Salamat, where we did a cultural festival, which was about Africa, but Sudanese dominated it by 60%. And we had music and cultural dancing, and it was all organized by the children over there. So we had lots of tents, and we were just showcasing the good things about Sudan, because abroad, if you ask people about Sudan, the first thing they'll say is, where's that? The second thing they'll say is, oh, I know that place. Is that where people are starving? So if you Google Sudan on the internet, it's mostly negative. We did this event in last summer, and it opened up people's eyes, because we had lots of tents, with showcasing all the beautiful and diverse heritage of the Sudan, including the food. We introduced people to garasa and asida and things like that. And they didn't even know. They said, oh, this is delicious. I didn't know you did this in Sudan. So there's a lot to offer, and we have to do it. So if we're going to change the misconception about Sudan, we have to do it ourselves. Stop being so negative. There's problems here, but it's not just about the problems. We keep looking behind. Let's keep looking forward. Yeah? I know I've got 30 seconds left. So remember this quote, okay? This sad to be leaving the continent for now. Africa will define the future. Not sure where yet, but I'll be living here. I'll be living here for 3 to 6 months in the mid-2020 next year. Grateful I was able to experience a small part. And that is the CEO of Twitter. His name is Jack Dorsey. Yeah? Thank you very much. Korea, salam, dala. Thank you.
بنحلم بفضاء أوسع بنحلم بزمن أجمل بلاد ميلاد